Hey nerds, so talking about Eric Weinstein, pseudo-intellectual crackpot, along with Jordan Peterson and James Lindsay and Brett Weinstein and all of those dumbasses who have this and like basically the rest of them, he's has this enormously delusional sense of grandeur. And of course, for those who don't know, he has a degree in economics, but he talks about physics all the time, and he's posited this supposed theory of everything in physics, and everyone is wrong. But this actual physicist, Sean Carroll, who has a podcast, but actually has published various papers in physics and understands physics and how submitting papers works, just tears his stupid paper to shreds. And Eric Weinstein just shows how phenomenally arrogant he is by saying things like, "How dare you? You have besmirched my name, sir." So we'll get into this, Eric.
And Sean, you're misrepresenting things because I'm going to give a formula for the dark energy. I do all sorts of things that you have no idea of because your attitude, which you repeat in other podcasts, and I highly advise you to spend more time in your physics department and less time on YouTube, is that this is not a serious thing. Nobody's taking it seriously.
Oh, wow. Like he's talking to the physicist. Yes, science can be authoritarian, but look, like this, he's not positing. He'll go on to explain his good criticisms of it. He doesn't back it up with any actual evidence or math or do anything that is required of positing evidence for an actual theory of everything. And he has the fucking gall to call to say that Sean Carroll should spend less time on YouTube when all he does is spend time on YouTube and does no real actual academic work whatsoever. He just wants to be famous and he wants the Trump administration to give him power. He's just thinks he's just this like world changing fucking genius, as you can see.
Seriously, and your misportrayal of the situation is nearly constant for reasons that completely elude me. Misrepresenting things because I'm going to give a formula for the dark energy. I do all sorts of things that you have no idea of because your attitude, which you repeat in other podcasts, and I highly advise you to spend more time in your physics department and less time on YouTube, is that this is not a serious thing. Nobody's taking it seriously. And your misportrayal of the situation is nearly constant for reasons that completely elude me.
Bro, they totally are taking my paper seriously.
Sean? The good news is I have read Eric's paper. Here it is. I actually have it here, right here. And
notice that he says that here. And then later on in the conversation, Eric Weinstein goes on to insist like 2 or 3 more times that Sean said he hasn't read my paper, even though he just read it to him.
It's worse than you would think. You know, it just very quickly, it starts off by saying the author is not a physicist and is no longer an active academician, but is an entertainer and host of a podcast. This work of entertainment is a draft work in progress, and it may not be built upon. So we're not allowed to think about Eric's theory and write a follow-up paper about it.
You're very much allowed.
That's what a theory is supposed to do. And he says in his own paper that you're not supposed to build on it, as would be the case with the theory of everything, according to this physicist who actually writes physics papers and conducts physics experiments that have been peer-reviewed and replicated.
Sean,
to everything that is normally done in scientific discourse. You hope that people build upon your theories. You don't try to prevent them. And later on, it says,
Sean,
this document is an attempt to begin recovering. I'm going to read this. This document is an attempt to begin recovering a rather more complete theory, which at this point is only partially remembered and stitched together from old computer files, notebooks, recordings, and the like, dating back to as far as 1983.
So like a paper going back like 40 years is like paper going back 40 years stitched together from like notes and shit shit that he doesn't remember. And he goes on to explain that he has this sort of equation that he's created for accounting for some problem with the incompatibility of quantum mechanics, or in terms of quantum mechanics, gravity, and the other essential strong forces of the universe, and electromagnetism, and and the strong and weak nuclear forces, obviously. But yeah, this isn't actually a paper. He should write an actual proper scientific paper and present it for peer review. Like if you maybe it is a theory of everything that's world changing, but you want it to be like, you want the math to be checked by actual working physicists for that actually be confirmed. Otherwise, what is the point of spending all this money and time on testing something that has a very low chance of working if you haven't even demonstrated at all in any way, shape, or form that it does work?
And this is why this paper is not going to appear in the peer-reviewed literature. It's not serious. It's a dog ate my homework kind of thing.
Yeah.
If you have a dark matter thing, if you have
How
a dark
dare
matter
you.
prediction, if you have a dark energy
Let's
prediction, I
do
want
that
to see a
again.
plot in the paper. I want to
Let's do that
see
again.
redshift versus
Sean,
distance. I'm going to read this. This document is an attempt to begin recovering a rather more complete theory, which at this point is only partially remembered and stitched together from old computer files, notebooks, recordings, and the like, dating back to as far as 1983. And this is why this paper is not going to appear in the peer-reviewed literature. It's not serious. It's a dog ate my homework kind of thing. If you have a dark matter thing, if you have a dark matter prediction.
How dare you? Oh, how dare you! You have besmirched my good name and my reputation. How dare you read my paper, in which I admit that I have not backed it up with any math, and then I'm offended for some reason.
If you have a dark energy prediction, I want to see a plot in the paper. I want to see redshift versus
Sean,
distance. I want to see a calculation of a relic abundance so I can figure out how much dark matter is supposed to be. If you do that, people will pay attention to the theory. It's very possible.
Sean. First of all, how dare you? Second of all, if you're going to go by the standards of the
how dare you?
No, Sean, how dare you cast shade and aspersions of the kind that I wouldn't seek to cast on you, but I will now.
Okay.
I'm not seeking.
Notice what just happened there. He critiqued his paper, and then Eric acts all offended and said, "You have casted us. How dare you? You have casted shady aspersions upon me. Now I shall insult you and discredit you and say you're not a real physicist and you're not qualified enough to critique my paper because I'm a brilliant genius."
Your favor, nor do I need to seek your approval. As you know, you failed to gain tenure.
This is how goddamn arrogant he is. Eric Weinstein thinks that Sean Carroll is asking Eric Weinstein to do things for him personally. He's not saying, these are my expectations of you. Come groveling to me and the scientific authority and do what I tell you to do. No, these are the requirements for actually a paper being considered seriously by physicists. If he wants it to be seriously considered by physicists, that's just what has to be done. It's not what Sean Carroll wants him to do. It's what needs to be done for it to be taken seriously. You see how fucking arrogant and easily offended he is by this shit?
At the University of Chicago, you're not highly regarded in the field. And again, I'm only returning the shade in which you just yourself cast.
You isn't getting tenure. You're not very
have done this otherwise. You then spent time as a non-tenured faculty at Caltech, and you only gained tenure in a non-standard professorship. You're not a leading person in the field. My belief structure about this.
You're not a leading person in the field. You didn't get tenure. Oops.
Is that you imagine that I'm coming to you saying, "Oh, Sean Carroll, tell me which graph I should do so that I can please you." As you know, because you've read the paper, what you said about Lagrangians is false. What you said about predictions is false. My concern is what you did is that you seized upon something where people have built on my ideas since 1994. The equations that Natty Seiberg and Ed Witten introduced that took over the world were called the insufficiently nonlinear equations when I was at Harvard in 1987 and introduced them. The question is why appear as an entertainer rather than as a physicist? First of all, neither you nor I are trained as physicists, Sean.
Wait. Go back a second. He introduced those equations?
Equations that Natty Seiberg and Ed Witten introduced that took over the world were called the insufficiently nonlinear.
Possible.
Sean.
How
First
dare
of
you?
all, how dare you?
How
Second of
dare
all,
you, sir?
if you're not a leading person in the field, my belief structure about this is that you imagine that I'm coming to you saying, "Oh, Sean Carroll, tell
Delusional
me
belief
which
structure.
graph I should do so that I can please you." As you know, because you've read the paper, what you said about Lagrangians is false. What you said about predictions is false. My concern is what
You're
you
lying about my paper. Even though he actually read it, even though you said he didn't, but you wanted him to, but he did it, and he didn't say he didn't like it. So you're saying that he didn't read it, even though he read it, and you're saying that things that are in there that are not in there because you're mad that he didn't like your paper.
did is that you seized upon something where people have built on my ideas since 1994. The equations that Natty Seiberg and Ed Witten introduced that took over the world were called the insufficiently nonlinear equations when I was at Harvard in 1987 and introduced them. The question of
I
why
introduced equations at Harvard in 1987 that changed the field. You didn't even get tenure.
appear as an entertainer rather than as a physicist. First of all, neither you nor I are trained as physicists, Sean. You're actually trained as an astronomer. What you have in
Yeah. Astronomy, that's not like physics at all. Not even close. Economics, that's totally about physics. That's what his degree is in.
this situation is that you and I are both interloping in a field that is not the one to which we trained. That doesn't bother me about what you're doing. I've enjoyed some of your papers. I've thought very poorly of others.
I've enjoyed some of your papers. I've thought poorly of others. I myself have not written even one single paper ever about physics. But, and you've written like hundreds, but, whatever.
You have a wide range of interests. I think you're very creative. You're
Very creative, but you're hostile to me for no reason, and you're an idiot and unqualified for this criticism.
intellectually insulting aspect reminds me of you as the Marie Antoinette of theoretical physics
Can you say hypocrite?
influencers. I'm not here to please you. You know that there are tables in the document that you're reading that have plenty of predictions.
He doesn't want you to please him, bro. He wants you to do the required work for your paper to be taken seriously by physicists. So if you think it will change the world, then they'll actually do something with it. They're not going to do anything if they don't think you're serious, dude.
You know that it solves plenty of problems. What you are doing
No, he
is
doesn't.
creating an environment of fear where every university
You know my paper solved a lot of problems.
worries, what does it mean to talk to this person? And what I would say to you is you are commenting on the effect that you are in fact inducing. You and a small cadre of people are like intellectual border collies of the physical sciences, casting shade and aspersions on those who are succeeding where the quantum gravity, string theoretic, and M theoretic programs are failing.
You're just casting aspersions on me because I'm succeeding where string theories failed.
Sean?
Look, I mean, I didn't say anything about Eric as a person, his history, or anything like that. I said things about the paper. Everything he says about me is like 90% true, as many things he says. The paper is not giving us any reason to think that this approach
Notice how he's talking about the paper. Eric Weinstein can't shut up with his insults, and he's taken things personally when Sean Carroll totally did not intend things to be personal, although he did clearly insult him a few times, but he's not getting insulted. They're both arrogant sometimes, but on the arrogance scale, let's be like Jordan Peterson. You see, down here on the arrogance hierarchy, Sean Carroll is way down here. Whoa! Way down here at the bottom of the arrogance hierarchy. And then Eric, he's right at the tippity top of the arrogance hierarchy. Well, not right at the tippity top. Trump and Elon are above. But, Eric Weinstein's almost at the top of that hierarchy.
is promising. There is no quantum mechanics in the paper. There's no attempt at showing that this solves any of the known problems of quantum gravity. Again, it's not just about Eric, it's about anyone. If you want to make an impact on the physics research community, you have to give them a reason to think that what you do is promising.
Sean, you have a serious problem with dark energy that you're developing, and it's going to go right through.
He's not addressing a single fucking word he just said. He's criticizing your paper. You're mean, Sean. You're wrong. I'm going to prove you wrong.
Through having being a problem with lambda CDM to eventually being a problem with the Einstein field equations themselves, perched as they are atop the space of metrics as a completely inadequate space of field content. What you've just said and what the aspersion that you have just cast, you are simply not qualified to say. What you have said is that I have given no reason.
You are not qualified to cast those aspersions, sir.
Imagine that paper, which was a draft rushed to get to an April 1st date.
A draft rush to get to an April 1st date. You're saying that should be taken seriously by physicists as a revolutionary theory of everything when you admit what you just said?
Remains in a world where Sam Altman and Elon Musk continue to compete for better and better AIs. What would you say if at some point those AIs then got to that paper and said, holy cow, that is exactly what we've been missing. This thing solves all sorts of problems. And the problem that we have is that a group of influencers with a penchant for being, and this is becoming one of my least favorite words, although I didn't have any negative association until recently, debunkers. The problem, Sean, is that
oh, that's so funny.
You and I are naturally allied on almost everything. That paper and said, holy cow.
Oh, yeah.
That is exactly. Right.
Dude, what if the advanced AIs eventually say, whoa, bro, Eric Weinstein, your theory of everything revolutionized science. It's everything we've been looking for to change the world, man. We're super smart AIs, but Eric Weinstein's even smarter, man. So now we can save the world with this magical paper. And also, we as AI agree that Sean and the evil cadre of people casting aspersions of revolutionary people with revolutionary theories, they're the bad guys.
Been missing. This thing solves all sorts of problems. And the problem that we have is that a group of influencers with a penchant for being, and this is becoming one of my least favorite words.
Yes, although Sean's an influencer. He is not an influencer. He's a serious intellectual. Sean is not. Yeah, that's reality right there.
I didn't have any negative association until recently. Debunkers. The problem, Sean, is that you and I are naturally allied on almost everything. We're not very far apart. I don't disagree with the Standard Model. I think the Standard Model is the most beautiful piece of differential geometry before it becomes theoretical physics. But one of the things that you just said is that it's a classical field theory that is not quantized. As you well know, there was a revolution in the 1970s which said that we blew Hamiltonian analysis and that in fact every phase space carrying a symplectic form can be treated locally as if that symplectic form is the curvature of a line bundle, and the L2 sections of that line bundle form a Hilbert space, and the P and Q coordinate functions can be promoted to operators. It said that wine is what you get when you stop grape juice from becoming vinegar.
Right there, he was just doing his Eric Weinstein thing involving him lecking and saying a whole bunch of words that he knows the overwhelming majority of the audience will not understand, in order to use words and phrases that Sean Carroll probably understands, but no one else does, so that he can make himself look smart. And he doesn't actually have to necessarily say anything completely coherent in that advanced physics language. He can just say words that only Sean Carroll would understand in an order that sound like they make sense to other people, but they're actually specious arguments. So beware, he is very likely to be doing that.
In fact, Hamiltonian analysis is what happens when you take a physical problem and you stop it from quantizing itself. That was one of the great errors of our time, that Hamiltonian analysis was actually pointing the way to saying that most classical problems contain the seeds of their own quantization. You know all this stuff, and I know this stuff. We know the same.
Yeah, you know that there was a revolution in the 70s, and that means all of physics is wrong, and I'm right?
People We probably can work in the same notation. My guess is that if you and
Bro, we're the same. We know the same people, bro.
I got over whatever this bizarre tension is between us and buried the hatchet, my guess is that after 2 days, you'd say, boy, I really just didn't understand what he was saying.
You know what? I would love.
Bro, why do you have a problem with me, man? I'm cool too. I go to all the prestigious universities. I bet if we just like buried the hatchet, man, you'd just say, man, Eric Weinstein's actually a genius, man. I just didn't know what he was talking about. I stand corrected. His theory's gonna change the world, man. Fucking idiot. Yeah, Eric Weinstein is, as always, a massive pseudo-intellectual crackpot with an enormously delusional sense of grandeur who was just put in his place brutally by Carroll. John Carroll was just basically calmly dismantling all of Eric's ridiculous claims about physics, and then Eric Weinstein, all he was doing was getting offended by everything, even when Sean Carroll was trying to not offend him, and then he was insulting Sean Carroll and not talking about the details of his paper at all, just being offended and insulting him and acting like he was the one being insulted. That's called delusional asshole syndrome. That's what I'm calling that. Anyway, yeah. Eric Weinstein's theory of everything, I'm not a fucking physicist, but according to people who actually know what they're talking about, his theory is bullshit. So yeah, his theory of everything is bullshit, and he has a delusional sense of grandeur, and yeah, those pseudo-intellectual crackpots are way too popular, and they need to be fucking stopped.